There we go.
All right. This is what's known in comedy circles. This is what's known in comedy circles as the warm-up bit, folks. I'm priming you all, and that's not a form of sexual harassment. But it is now. All right. Where did I? Another good thing. Normally in comedy, you don't get to bring up a script like this, so you just have to like remember things. But yeah, you'll notice I'm following Milo's trend of using the good old tablet instead of 20th century sheets of paper. All right. I was at a gig once in London. A lot of my stories start like this. You meet a lot of unexpected people at gigs in London. And one time I met comedian and podcaster Richard Herring, whom some of you may have heard of. We both just happened to be at a dive bar at the same time, and I was like, "You're Richard Herring?" And he was like, "Yeah, I am." And evidently he was. And we got chatting over a pint or two, as you do, and we eventually got onto the subject of why we went into comedy. Boobs, he said. I said, yeah, but seriously. And he said, no, seriously, I went into comedy to get laid. Let's be honest about it. Why does anyone do anything to survive and ultimately reproduce? That's not how he said it. Rich isn't quite as articulate as that. And he asked me, well, why did you get into comedy if not for the girls? And I had to think about it for a bit. And I said, you know when you're at the hospital and you're visiting like an elderly relative or something, and they're going to die, and you know they're going to die, and they know they're going to die, but there's no amends to be made, there's no problems to be fixed, but you feel this powerlessness, feel this overwhelming sense of, I wish there was something I could do. I wish I could study medicine for 7 years and find a cure for this, but you'll be dead before I can fill out the application form. Come to think of it, I'll be dead before I can fill out the application form. You know how it is with the NHS. And then they laugh at the silly thing you just said. And then you're both laughing, and the weight sort of lifts. It lifts from them, and it lifts from you, and you're in a moment where nothing matters. Not life, not death, not anything. And they give you this smile that like you've never seen before, as if to say, thank you. Look, I know I'm on the way out. I've accepted it. I've had a good life. There's no reason to be sad, and I don't want to make anyone else sad. I want to go out smiling. Tell me another one. That's why I do comedy, because even when there's nothing I can do, there's still something I can do. Do you know what I mean, Rich? Have you ever... And he's like, nah, boobs are better. Now, that story about Richard Herring is not true. But what it tells us about Richard Herring is true. I'd like to thank Stuart Lee for the format of that joke, but I think I told it better. It's the 19th of November, Rich. The 19th of November, in case you've forgotten. Hi, my name's Mike. I'm here to tell you why funny people kill themselves. It's because most funny people are men, and most people who kill themselves are men. It's a correlation. All right, good talk. Do we have a Q&A, everyone? I should do some clarifying. Because arguably there is something sort of causal in there. First of all, men and women are different. Sorry if I burst anyone's bubble there, but it's true. It's like peacocks and peahens are different. But human males don't typically find a mate using displays of beauty. They do it using displays of ability and personality. A woman can arouse a man simply by looking like a woman, but for a man to arouse a woman, he needs to make her smile, which can be achieved by fighting all the other men and winning, if she's into that sort of thing, but it can also be achieved by telling a joke, by creating that moment when nothing matters. And to hark back on Belinda's point, that might just be how we became a pair-bonding species instead of just a tournament species. We evolved a mating ritual that doesn't necessarily involve brutal competition between males, thereby leaving men's competitive nature free to work on something productive rather than just reproductive. And boom, we have civilization. High five, somebody throw a bone in the air. So no, women are not just as funny as men. If they were, we wouldn't have thumbs. In a way, it's an extension of the gender roles given to us by nature. Men provide resources, women receive them. Men provide humour, women react to it. Selectively speaking, it's men's job to be funny and it's women's job to be happy. That's not exactly a picnic for women either, by the way. Women who are constantly angry or miserable are less likely to find a committed partner. But men who are boring and cheap are unlikely to find a committed partner. By and large, I say men are under more pressure there. If you're expected to be resourceful and funny, that's not easy. Being resourceful often leaves you too tired to be funny, and in many cases too dead to be funny. But nor is it necessarily a bed of roses if you're expected to wear a veil of happiness when you're not really happy. As a matter of fact, it's excruciating. That's why it's hardly a surprise that women kill themselves too. Have you heard this one? Suicide is the coward's way out. You're just avoiding your responsibilities. It's a brilliant joke. It's an absolute corker, don't get me wrong. But as a serious statement, it's the most false thing you could possibly say about suicide victims and the most dangerous thing you could say to suicidal people because it's so false. If people kill themselves out of fear of responsibility, fear of commitment, then they'd kill themselves before a job interview, or when they take out a mortgage, or the day before their wedding, or when they're about to have a child, but they don't. In reality, in quite stark reality, people don't kill themselves before they get married, they kill themselves after they get divorced. They kill themselves after they lose their children and their job and their community. They don't kill themselves to avoid responsibility, they kill themselves when they have no responsibilities left, when they've all been taken away, when their spouses don't need them anymore, their children don't need them anymore. No one needs them anymore. A lot of people can't handle not being needed. Men in particular, as I just said, are biologically soft-wired to make people smile, to make women smile. So when the day comes for society and all its legal facets to say to a man, you don't get to make people smile anymore, is it any wonder he can't go on? And is it any wonder that comedians, people whose profession, whose bread and butter is to make people smile, are even more vulnerable to this condition? This harrowing sense of, I can't make people smile anymore. What's the point? That's a good question, as far as I can tell. If I can't smile and I can't make people smile, if I can't improve other people's experience or understanding of the world, then what is even the point? It's not an impossible question, but it is jolly difficult. So, people kill themselves, and over 70% of these people are men. Is this a problem? Not necessarily. This is the part of the speech where I shock you with my cold, dark heart. But no, absolute equality is not my business. There are biological reasons men die sooner. There are biological reasons men earn more money than women. So, is it not true that there might be biological reasons men kill themselves more? Testosterone makes you take risks. Risks, by their very nature, result in successes and failures. In a perfectly equitable system, men will still account for most of the extreme successes and most of the extreme failures. So no, I do not wish to reduce the suicide ratio to a tight 50-50 between men and women, because I'm not a social justice warrior. I am not interested in engineering human beings into a state of indistinguishability. Nor do I want to reduce the number of suicides to 0. I'm a human rights advocate. I would like every man and every woman to have the right to take their lives into their own hands, and that includes taking their deaths into their own hands. I know it seems like the virtuous thing to say is that the ideal number of suicides per year would be 0, but I can't commit to that. If someone has a terminal or neurodegenerative illness that they know is only going to leave them in pain or dementia in the last few years of their lives, and they would rather just blow their own heads off than become a vegetable, then who am I to tell them it would be ideal if they didn't? Who am I to say we want that 0 counter? We want to get that gold star on our suicide report for this year. So be a darling and sit there for years while your brain turns to mush. It's for the greater good. So you can't expect perfect ratios from humans. We're not perfect. And you certainly shouldn't enforce perfect ratios. So I don't have a number for you. I can't say to you, hit this number of suicides and this ratio of suicides and I'll be happy. All I can really say is the suicide rate is too damn high. And it is. I know we're taking the sort of scenic route to this conclusion, but that's all it is. The suicide rate is too damn high. And if it's just about the rate rather than the ratio, then where are my priorities? Hey, because lung cancer kills 4 times as many men as suicide. Heart disease kills even more. Why am I not doing a talk about the dangers of fatty foods and smoking? Well, for one thing, death by disease is sort of a toggle switch. It either happens or it doesn't. No one goes, I think I might try to die of a heart attack this week. No one goes, I think I might try to contract cancer. Whereas death by suicide is less of a toggle switch and more of a slider. You don't wake up one day and notice a suicidal rash on your elbow. You don't go to the doctor to be told, it's bad news, you have suicidal tendencies. Did you know? See this shadowy region in your frontal lobe? That's suicide. You know about this condition long before your doctor does. Just like it doesn't simply toggle on, it doesn't simply toggle off. You find a cure. There is no cure, only treatment. The ascent out of it is just as arduous as the descent into it. So like I said in the beginning, I do this because there's something I can do. I'm not going to find a cure for cancer anytime soon. And I can hardly tell an old guy with a terminal disease that he shouldn't kill himself. I've never been in that position. But I can talk to perhaps young people who are suicidal despite no physical health problems, who incidentally account for the majority of suicides, men between the ages of 20 and 50. As many of you may know, it is in fact the leading cause of death for men in that alarmingly wide age range. That, by the way, does not sound natural or biologically accountable to me. The idea that suicide is the leading cause of death for any demographic, let alone young people, I'd say that's an indication that something has gone seriously wrong and avoidably wrong. You wouldn't think 20-year-old men and 50-year-old men would have much in common, but there you go. Why are you killing yourself? Because I'll never get to make my children smile again? What about you? Because I'll never get to smile again. Yeah, that one never gets a huge laugh. Yeah, you had to be there. Maybe we could help each other, eh? The 20-year-olds and the 50-year-olds. Take it from me, I'm a 35-year-old male. I'm right at the centre point of the danger zone. I've made it this far and I still haven't succumbed to my leading cause of death. And though I've never been 80 years old and terminally ill, I have been young and suicidal, as perhaps many of us have. 18 years old, never had a girlfriend, never had a job, never had any skills worth speaking of. Convinced that I'll never be able to smile or make anyone else smile. I was grumpy and cynical. A lot of young people don't understand that it's okay to be grumpy and cynical. As a matter of fact, it can be quite funny to be grumpy and cynical. One thing I can recommend is writing things down, if you're that way inclined. Writing things down in a grumpy and cynical way. Write things down and then never show them to anyone. You'll be convinced that the things you're writing are terrible and unreadable. And you're right, they will be. Don't write to entertain people. Don't even write to entertain yourself. Write your worst self-indulgent, self-hating emo poetry, just so you can see your thoughts sort of in front of you, formulated in some way. And then screw them up and burn them if you want to, or just keep them in a box or something. But if you keep going, if you keep writing, there's a chance that maybe the 500th thing you write will make you smile, or at least make you content with what you've written, just because it's well crafted. You'll develop an appreciation for things that are well crafted because you've seen so many things that aren't. And if you carry on beyond that, maybe the 1,000th thing you've written will make someone else smile. But that doesn't need to be your goal, making other people smile. You shouldn't need a goal. A lot of pop psychologists will tell you, write down your goals and try to incriminately achieve them. I disagree. Write whatever the hell you like. Draw whatever disturbing pictures you like. Waste your time if you want to. They say life is a journey, not a destination, and it's true. But it doesn't have to be a journey either. Dawdle, if you like. Sit on the side of the road and watch insects, if you like. And if you can't be bothered, then by all means kill yourself. Sorry, but it's an important thing to leave that option open to people. Especially when they feel like that's the only option they have left. The last thing you want to do is make them feel like they don't have that option either. It's only going to push them further in. Suicide is itself the result of an ultimatum, usually brought on by society or the family courts or whatever, but you can't fix that with another ultimatum. Men devote their lives to their children and their wives and their career and their communities. That's why when you take those things away from a man, he feels like he has no life left, because he's never really lived it for himself. And, the most important point is it's wrong to take those things away from men. We should not be legally facilitating the separation of men from their families. A man who works for a family deserves that family. But a man deserves a reason to live, with or without a family. I will never say to a man, you can't kill yourself, you have a wife and children to look after. Because at some point, he might turn around and say, I don't have those things anymore. I don't have anyone to look after. Now what? And the answer you've already given him is, yeah, all right, now you can kill yourself. The only way out is to conclude, in your own conscience, that a man does get to take his own life whenever he wants, because it's his life. That sounds harsh in theory, but in practice it's not. Telling him that is not going to encourage him to kill himself. On the contrary, it's the only way he's ever going to value himself. And as a man, you're going to need to value yourself, because there's a very good chance no one else will. But it's not the only element in the soup. Education is important. Growing up with a dad in early life is as important to mental health as getting to see your children in midlife. The problems are mostly surface problems, and they are to be tackled legally. But I'll let the other speakers fill you in on those details. They'll do a much better job than me. I'm not really qualified for any of this. I'm not a real doctor, it's just my username. I'm not a psychologist or a neurologist. I'm not a judge or a lawyer. I'm not a social worker or a teacher or a student or even a father. I'm not an expert on anything, if I'm perfectly honest, and I have no idea how to stop people from killing themselves. I just dick around and make people laugh. Thanks.